Hello or welcome to our channel Teacher at Home. Today class we are going to learn the 9th chapter, New Empires and Kingdom. Aravind plays a king. Aravind had been chosen to act as a king in the school play. അപ്പോൾ സ്കൂളിൽ ഒരു പ്ലേ നടക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. അതിൽ കിങ് ആയിട്ടാണ് അരവിന്ദ് ആക്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. He expected to march solemnly in splendid robes, to twirl his mustache and wield the silver paper wrapped sword with gusto. Imagine his surprise when he was told he would also have to sit and play a veena and recite poetry. A musician king was that, he wondered. ഒരു കിങ് ആയിട്ടാണ് ആ പ്ലേയിൽ ആക്ട് ചെയ്യേണ്ടത്. Precious this and what they tell us. Aravind was supposed to be acting as Samudragupta, a famous ruler of a dynasty known as Guptas. Of the Gupta dynasty, famous king ആണ് Samudragupta, ruler. We know about Samudragupta from a long inscription inscribed on the Ashoka pillar. നമുക്ക് എങ്ങനെ അറിയാം അശോക പില്ലറിൽ ഇൻസ്ക്രൈബ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട് അല്ലേ സമുദ്രഗുപ്തയുടെ പേര് ഓഫ് അലഹബാദ്. It was composed as a kavya by Harisena, was a poet and minister of the court of Samudragupta. പോയറ്റും പിന്നെന്താണ് മിനിസ്റ്ററും ആണ് അല്ലേ സമുദ്രഗുപ്തേത്. This inscription is of a special kind that is known as prashasti, Sanskrit word meaning in praise of. കൊഴുത്തുക എന്ന് പറയില്ലേ. While prashastis were composed of some of the rulers who read about in chapter 8, such as Gautami Putra, Sri Sadagarni, they became far more important from the time of the Gupta period. തൊട്ട് തന്നെ അവർ ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻ്റ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ആൾക്കാരാണ്. Samudragupta's Prashasti. Let us see what Samudragupta's Prashasti tells us. The poet praised the king in glowing terms as a warrior, as a king who won victories in battle, who was learned and the best of poets. It's also described as equal to the gods. Prashastis was composed in very long sentences. Here is a part of one such sentence. Samudragupta the warrior, whose body was most charming, being covered with the plenteous marks of the words, beauty of the marks of hundreds of scars, caused by battle axes, arrows, spikes, spears, barbed darts, swords, iron clubs, javelins, barbed arrows, long arrows. Many of the ബോഡിയിൽ നിറച്ചെന്താണ് മാർക്കിങ്സ് ആണ് അല്ലേ. ഈ യുദ്ധത്തിൽ നിന്ന് ലഭിച്ചതാണ് ഈ മാർക്കിങ്സ്. Why does this description tell about the king? If you look at map 7, you will notice the area shaded in green. You will also find a series of red dots along the east coast. And you will find areas marked in purple and blue as well. This map is based on the information provided in the Prashasti. Harisena describes 4 different kinds of rulers and tells us about Samudragupta's policies towards them. The rulers of Aryavarta, area shaded in green on the map. Here there are 9 rulers who were uprooted, and their kingdoms were made a part of the Samudragupta's empire. The rulers of Dakshinabhada, here there were 12 rulers. Some of these capitals are marked with red dots on the map. They surrendered to Samudragupta after being defeated, and then he allowed them to rule again. Inner circle of neighboring states, including Assam, Coast Bengal, Nepal, and a number of Gana Sanghas, that is said in chapter 5, the northwest, marked in purple on the map. They brought tribute, followed his orders, and attended his court. The king who played the veena. Some other qualities of Samudragupta are shown in the coins. It is shown playing the veena. The rulers of the outlying areas, marked in blue on the map, perhaps the descendants of the Kushanas and Sagas, and the ruler of Sri Lanka who submitted to him and offered daughters in marriage. Find Prayaga, the old name of Allahabad, Ujjain and Padaliputra, that is Patna, on the map. They were important centers on the Gupta rulers. What's the difference between the way in which Samudragupta treated the rulers of Aryavarta and Dakshinabhada? Can you suggest any reason for these differences? Here the inner state it is given in the pink color, and the blue it is outer state, and the grey it is the Aryavarta. Cities conquered by the Guptas. Vikram Samvat. They are beginning in the 58 BCE and traditionally associated with the Gupta king. Samudragupta II, who had founded it as the mark of victory of the Shagas, assumed the title of Vikramaditya. Genealogies, most precious these, also mention the ancestors of the ruler. This one mentions Samudragupta's great grandfather, father, and mother. His mother, Kumara Devi, belonged to the Lichavi Gana, while his father, Chandragupta, was the first ruler of the Gupta dynasty to adopt the grand title of Maharajadi Raja, a title that Samudragupta also used. His great grandfather and grandfather are mentioned simply as Maharajas. It seems as if the family gradually rose to importance. Arrange these titles in order of importance: Raja, Maharaja, Adi Raja, Maharaja. Samudragupta in turn figures in the genealogist list of ancestors of late rulers of the dynasty, such as his son Chandragupta II. We know about him from inscriptions and coins. He led an expedition to western India where he overcame the last of the Shagas. According to later belief, his court was full of learned people. About some of them you will read in chapter 10. Harshavardhana and the Harshacharita. While we learn about the Gupta rulers from the inscriptions and coins, we can find out about some kings from biographies. Harshavardhana, who ruled nearly 1400 years ago, was one such ruler. His court poet, Banabhatta, wrote his biography, Harshacharita, in Sanskrit. This gives us a genealogy of Harsha and ends with his becoming king. Xuanzang, about whom you read in chapter 8, also spent a lot of time at Harsha's court, left a detailed account of what he saw. Harsha was not the elder son of his father, but he became king of Taneshwar after both his father and elder brother died. His brother-in-law was the ruler of Kanauj, and he was killed by the ruler of Bengal. Harsha took over the kingdom of Kanauj and then led an army against the ruler of Bengal. Although he was successful in the east and conquered Magadha and probably Bengal also, he was not as successful elsewhere. He tried to cross the Narmada to march into the Deccan, but was stopped by a ruler belonging to the Chalukya dynasty, Pulageshin II. Look at political map of India and the list of the present day states with the Harshavardhana passed through he went to Bengal and up to the Narmada. The Pallavas, Chalukyas and Pulikeshins Prashasti. Pallavas Chalukyas were the most important ruling dynasty in South India during this period. The kingdom of the Pallavas spread from the region around the capital Kanjipuram to the Kaveri Delta, while that of the Chalukyas was centered around the Raichur Doaba between the rivers Krishna and Tungabhadra. Aihole, the capital of Chalukyas, was an important trading center. It developed as a religious center with a number of temples. Pallavas and Chalukyas frequently raided one another's land, especially attacking the capital cities, which were prosperous towns. The best known Chalukya ruler was Puligeshin II. He know about him as from a Prashasti composed by his court poet Ravikirti. This tells us about his ancestors who were traced back through 4 generations from father to son. Puligeshin evidently got the kingdom from his uncle. According to Ravikirti, he led expeditions along both the west and the east coast. Besides, he checked the advance of Harsha. There is an interesting play of words in the poem. Harsha means happiness. The poet says that after his defeat, Harsha was no longer Harsha. Pulakeshin also attacked the Pallava king, who took shelter behind the walls of Kanjipuram. But the Chalukya victory was short-lived. Ultimately, both the Pallavas and the Chalukyas gave way to new rulers belonging to the Rashtrakuta and Chola dynasty, about which you will study in class 7. Who were the other rulers who tried to control the coast and why? How were these kingdoms administered? As in the case of earlier kings, land revenue remained important for the rulers, and the village remained the basic unit of administration. There are some new developments as well. Kings adopted a number of steps to win the support of men who are powerful either economically or socially, or because of the political and military strength. For instance, some important administrative posts were now hereditary. This means that sons succeeded fathers to this post. For example, the poet Harshina was a Mahadanda Nayaka or chief judicial officer like his father. Sometimes one person held many offices. For instance, besides being a Mahadanda Nayaka, Harisena was a Kumar Amatya, meaning an important minister, and a Sandhi Vigrahiga, meaning a minister of war and peace. Besides, important men probably had a say in local administration. This included the Niagara Shasti or chief banker or merchant of the city, the Sartavaha of or leader of the merchant caravans, the Prathama Kulika or the chief craftsman, and the head of the Kayastas or scribes. These policies were reasonably effective, but sooner or later some of the powerful men grew strong enough to set up independent kingdoms. What do you think may have been the advantage and disadvantage of having hereditary offices? A new kind of army. Like earlier rulers, some of these kings maintained a well organized army with elephants, chariots, cavalry, and foot soldiers. Besides, there were military leaders who provided the king with troops whenever he needed them. They were not paid regular salaries. Instead, some of them received grants of land. They collected revenue from the land and used them to maintain soldiers and horses and provide equipment for warfare. These men were known as Samandas. Whenever the ruler was weak, Samandas tried to become independent. Assemblies in the southern kingdoms. The inscriptions of the Pallavas mention a number of local assemblies. This included the Sabha, which was an assembly of Brahmin landowners. Assembly functioned through subcommittees which looked after irrigation, agricultural operations, making roads, local temples, etc. The was a village assembly found in areas where the landowners were not Brahmins. And the Nagaram was an organization of merchants. It is likely that the assemblies was controlled by rich and powerful landowners and merchants. Many of these local assemblies continued the function of centuries. Ordinary people in the kingdom. We can catch an occasional glimpse of the lives of ordinary people from plays and other accounts. Let us look at some of this. Kalidasa is known for his plays depicting the life in King's Court. An interesting feature about this play is the king and most Brahmins are shown as speaking Sanskrit, while women and men other than the king and Brahmins use Prakrita. His most famous play is Abhignana Shakuntalam is the story of the love between the king named Dushyanta and the young woman named Shakuntala. We find an interesting description of the plight of a poor fisherman in this play. A fisherman finds a ring. Fisherman found a precious ring where the king had given to Shakuntala, but which had been accidentally swallowed by the fish. When he went to the palace with it, the gateman accused him of theft. The chief police officer was rather rude. However, the king was happy when he saw the ring and sent a reward to the fisherman. Then the police officer and the gateman decided to take the share of the reward and went along with the fisherman to have a drink. Famous man who taught the Prakrita and the king who issued inscription in Prakrita. The Chinese pilgrim Fa Xian noticed the plight of those who were treated as untouchables by the high and mighty. They were expected to live on the outskirts of the city. He writes, such a man enters a town or a marketplace. He strikes a piece of wood in order to keep himself separate. People hearing this sound know what it means and avoid touching him or brushing against him. And Banavata provides us with a vivid picture of the king's army on the move. King's army. The king traveled with an enormous amounts of equipment. Apart from weapons, there were things of daily uses such as pots, pans, furniture, golden food stools, food, including animals such as goat, deer, rabbits, vegetables, spices carried on carts or loaded onto the pack animals such as camels and elephants. This huge army was accomplished by musicians beating drums and other playing horns and trumpets. Villagers had to provide hospitality along the way. They came with gift of curd, gur, and flowers, provided the fodder for the animals. Also tried to meet the king and place their complaints and petitions before him. The army left a trail of destruction behind. Elephants often trampled down the huts of villagers, and the oxen yoked to the caravans of merchants ran away, scared by the tumult. As Banavata says, the whole world was swallowed up in dust. Make a list of all the things that were carried with the army. So that's all about this chapter. If you are interested, please do like, share, and subscribe my channel. Okay, thank you.